Okay, right now, I want to do something that I have been wanting to do on this channel for a very long time. I want to finally tell you guys, or I want to finally give you guys my very first story time video. I've told stories on this channel in small doses, but I've never made a full length story time video. So for today, I'm going to talk to you guys about what I consider to be the best year of my life, 2009. I want to talk to you guys about why that year is just so perfect for me, or why I look back on that year with such fondness. I escape into those memories. I escape just thinking about that school year because I was in first grade in 2009. And prior to that, my parents had gotten divorced in like 2008, and like my mom took my older brother and my youngest brother at the time to go live with her in PA, while my dad kept me and my middle brother in California, and that was very traumatic. I remember my parents would argue all day, every day, just screaming and fighting. And I'll never forget, I woke up one day from a nap as a toddler, and I just remember seeing my older brother scared, hiding under the bed because my parents' fighting had gotten so out of control. And I guess it was only a matter of time before they broke up and just split the family in two. So I had to deal with that. I had to see my brothers leave. I had to, again, another traumatic experience was whenever my mother dropped me off to school on my very first day of kindergarten. And I didn't know at the time until she told me, but, you know, I'm thinking that it's a normal day. I'm thinking it's a regular day. My mom is dropping me off to school. I'm already confused because I did not know what school was. I was just going in completely blind, but as soon as my mother dropped me off to the classroom, before she left, she gave me a big hug, a big kiss, and she told me, she said, I'm going away. She said, I'm leaving. I love you. And it's weird because looking back on it, she talked to me as if I was like a grown man. Like I was just a kid. I was a little boy. But the way she told me this was like I was a teenager or something. But yeah, I remember her telling me that she's going away and it may be a couple of years, and I was just crying. I was just traumatized. I was crying because I wasn't going to see my mom for years after that point. While all the other kids were crying because they weren't going to see their parents for like a couple of hours, I was crying because, again, I was not going to see my mom for years after that point. So my first day of kindergarten was very traumatic. But after that year had passed, after 2008 had finished, by the time 2009 came along, I was settled into my new life. I was happy, I was living with my father, and my dad was dating this Mexican girl at the time, and she had two kids of her own. She had like a teenage son. I forgot what age he was, but I want to say he was like either 17 or 18, and she also had a daughter, right? So after my parents divorced and my dad found a new girlfriend or whatever, they moved into this suburban house. And down the street, like I want to say 100 feet away from my house in our neighborhood, there was this giant school. I'll never forget it. Most schools in California are like campus schools, right? So this school was like an outside campus school, and it was a huge giant school. But I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But before that, right? Before that, I was like settled in with my new life, Yes, it was still depressing and sad that my mom was gone, but I would call my mom and talk to my brothers every once in a while, right? But while in between those moments, in between me talking to my mom on the phone, while she's like in Georgia and PA just living her life, I was living my life with my dad and my younger brother. My dad would take me and my brother to Hollywood Video. He would take us to the movie theater. He would take us out to eat, and it was just a great life, like for a small period of time, for that brief moment in history, I got to experience a normal life. it was so peaceful, you know? And I also think it was so great for me because I don't think we will ever get a time period like the 2000s, right? I was born in '03. I did not get to experience the 90s. I wish I did, but I didn't, right? So the mid to late 2000s for me, those were my 80s slash 70s slash 90s. Like the 90s for us, the 90s for Gen Zers were the 2000s. So I remember just like all the old superhero films, GameCube, Smash Brothers, Melee, fucking the Wii just came out during that time, the DS was out during that time. Bro, I remember when they first announced Arkham Asylum, bro. Even as a little fucking kid, I was so excited for that fucking game, but like just stuff like that, bro. I remember Shadow the Hedgehog or Sonic Unleashed, like, bro, those years were so peak for us, man. Like, those years were so fucking magical. Like, I remember every time I got an A on my spelling test, my dad would take me to Hollywood Video and he would let me pick out a game. And small stuff like that just really it made me happy. Like, I can look back on those memories and I can just cry about it in a sense because it was so magical and peaceful. As a child, you are not burdened with the reality of life. You're not burdened with awareness. When you're a child, you are not burdened with the truth of the world, Like, awareness is a fucking burden, bro. Like, awareness is a fucking burden. You know that line in Infinity War where Thanos is like, Iron Man is like, how do you know me? And Thanos said, you're not the only one cursed with knowledge. That's some real shit. Like, when you get to a certain point, you are cursed with knowledge and you are cursed with awareness, bro. Like, awareness is a fucking curse, bro. But anyway, but getting back to it, right? Getting back to it. My life was so great, bro. My dad used to treat us like we were kings, bro. Because it was just me and my little brother, So it was just perfect, man. It was fucking perfect. So getting to my first grade year, so after that, right, we got settled into our new house in the suburbs. And like I said, down the street was a great, giant, huge school. And it was predominantly a Hispanic slash white school, right? And most people will tell you that that's a bad thing as a person who is African American. They always make it seem as if being the only African American is a bad thing. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't African Americans who have had bad experiences in the predominantly white space. I'm not going to say that's not a real thing, but you have to remember, just because you had a bad experience at a predominantly white school does not mean that everyone else has that experience as well. Because in my anecdotal experience, every time I was at a predominantly Hispanic or white school, I wasn't picked on. I wasn't treated in a bad way, It was different for me. High school was a different story. In high school, I was more so invisible, right? So I wasn't making friends with white people in high school or in middle school, but they weren't picking on me, right? So it's better to be ignored than it is to be physically and verbally assaulted. But anyway, back to first grade, right? So on my very first day of first grade, my teacher gave us a tour of the school and, I got to see all the kids and I got to just, I guess, be a part of that experience. And I was trying to take it all in. And it's funny because looking back on it, I don't remember having social anxiety as a first grader. When I was in first grade, I wasn't outgoing. I was always naturally quiet. Like, my mom always told me, she thought I was always autistic as a baby. Because as a baby, I never cried. I was always quiet as a baby unless I was hungry. So that's why I believe personality, I can't talk for shit. That's why I believe personality is genetics, I believe it's genetics because how the fuck, like, I have cousins and brothers who were very vocal as babies, but I was quiet as a baby. That's not my choice. I was born quiet, So yeah, but although I was quiet as a first grader, I wasn't shy. I was still social in a sense, right? So I was like struggling in the beginning. I was like struggling to make friends, right? Because it was the first day of school. You don't know anyone. And for the rest of the day, after we were given a tour, it was like recess for the rest of the day because it was like the first day of school, right? So after that, I'm like getting ready to go outside, and I don't know what the fuck it was about me, but all I remember was that there was this young, like short white girl, and I will never forget her name. Her name was Isabella, and she had short brown hair, and she was like a short white girl, and for some reason she took to me. Like for some fucking reason she liked me, and like she told me she wanted to be my friend, and she was like, "Don't leave without me. Let's play." And ever since that first day of school, me and her were the best of friends. Like I don't know what it was about me, bro. It's like when you're a child, I guess when you're a child, you're just less judgmental. I mean, obviously, right? Like when you're a kid, you don't see race as a kid, and that's why I don't really believe in a lot of the shit people say because racism is taught. I'm not trying to go off into some tangent, but racism is taught. Like a young white girl didn't see my race. She just accepted me for who I was. And yeah, after that day, me and her became the best of fucking friends, and we did everything together. And what was funny was that her mom actually taught in the same grade as her, but she was like down the hall from us. And as a kid, I always thought that was weird. I'm like, why aren't you in your mother's classroom? I'm like, why aren't you being taught by your mom? But that was just a weird question I would ask myself as a kid. But I don't know. Isn't that weird to like, if your mom is a first grade teacher and you're in first grade, I mean, can't your mom make something happen and make you her student? I don't know. It's so fucking weird to me, but that was always weird. But yeah, man, me and Isabella were best friends. And eventually, me and her had a friend group. Like, we had a big friend group, and there were some guys there too who I was very close with as well. And all I can say was that it was blissful, bro. Every day was a journey. Every day at that school was a grandiose adventure. It was a new adventure every day at that fucking school. Like, even the older kids liked me. They all thought I was cool. Like, my dad's girlfriend, like I said, she had a son, and his name was Dustin, right? And he would cut my hair. Like, he was like a barber. He was like a barber, and he would cut my hair, and he would put designs in my head. When you're a kid, right? When you're a kid and you get haircuts, designs are like the coolest shit. He used to put star designs in my head, and every day I went back to school with a new haircut, all the kids would say, Sloth, your hair is so fucking cool. Yo, Sloth, who cut your hair? Your hair is awesome. And it's like, bro, looking back on those memories, it's like, damn, like, that feels so good, bro. It feels so good to get positive reinforcement, like, to look back on those years or that year and to just remember what they said, bro. It feels so fucking great, man. It feels so great, like, man, even my teacher was so nice, bro, and it's so sad to think about, like, sometimes I wonder, like, is my teacher still alive, or is she, like, perished? Or has she perished? Like, or, did she perish, right? Because she wasn't, like, elderly, but she was, like, in her middle age. Like, she was, like, middle age, like, 50s or 40s, and, even stuff like that is sad, bro. Stuff like that is sad, and I don't know, man, that whole year was just perfect, bro. It was just so great. I used to come home every day, watch cartoons, and I used to just play my game, play Xbox every day, and bro, like, for a short period of time, I got to experience that suburban lifestyle. Just that normal lifestyle, bro. Like, I'll never forget also, like, my dad took me to go see Transformers 2. Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen, and Optimus Prime supposedly dies in the beginning. Like, I remember bawling my eyes out as a kid, and my dad was like, don't worry, he's gonna come back. Don't worry, son, he's gonna come back. Like, don't cry. And, like, moments like that just make me sad inside, bro. Like, because life was so fucking simple, bro. Even though I still did miss my mom, I was still content because my mom would still send for us. She would still talk to us on the phone. It was still normal, but, like, it's like, damn, man, like, life was so fucking simple. Like, where did it all go wrong, bro? fuck, man. Like it was so amazing, bro. It was just me, my younger brother, and a great school life. You know, my dad took care of us. You know, everything was fucking fine, bro. Fuck, man. There was this after school program at my school. And me and Isabella used to just get into trouble every day during the after school program. And eventually, we got into so much trouble that the after school teacher called her mom, and she called my dad, and her mom and my dad, they had to sit us both down and talk to us, and you know they told us to stay out of trouble. And I mean, just moments like that, bro. Again, small moments like that just mean the world to me. In hindsight, it's like, what the heck, bro. And it's also weird because after Isabella, I've never had a female friend. Like, she was my only female friend. Like, that's why I say I don't know what it was about me that she just liked, but for some reason she liked me. And I am not going to lie, guys. Some days I sit and I just wonder, like, would we have blossomed into something greater? Some days I feel blue-pilled, and I love to convince myself that if I would have stayed, that me and her would have dated in high school and married in college and eventually have a happily ever after and have children and live in the suburbs. But I know that's all false. I have been indoctrinated by Boy Meets World, and Boy Meets World, you have Topanga and Corey. They met in their childhood era. Then they grew up together, fell in love in school, and they married and had a daughter, and they had a family. And that's what I believed I missed out on. But I didn't miss out on anything, because eventually she would have discovered that she wasn't attracted to me. Once puberty would have set in, she would have discovered that she was attracted to a certain type of guy, and that guy was not me, because when puberty hit me, guys, like, I'm not going to say I was attractive before, but I was normal before puberty. But once puberty hit me, I peaked at like 5'6". I developed some weird asymmetrical face. Like, if you see a picture of me from my childhood, I look relatively normal. But then you see a picture of me at like 14 or 13 or 15, and I have an asymmetrical face, and I look hideous, bro. Like, if Isabella saw me today, she would be disgusted by my appearance, because that kid she knew in first grade developed into a sub-5, but I'm pretty sure she has forgotten about me, but I still remember her, which is so pathetic, man. And what's also really brutal about it is it's the fact that I know she's dating a Chad Light or a Chad, and she's someone's fiance or boyfriend, and she has a social life. She has a great social life. She probably has a great career. Her mom was a teacher. I'm pretty sure she went to a great college, and she has a great life as an adult now. And like I said, she's dating some Chad or some high-tier normie, and they're living a nice existence. And while they're dating and having a great life, I'm just over here rotting in my terrible, miserable existence, bro. And that's what kills me inside. That's what eats me up inside, is knowing that, bro. But at the same time, I can't hurt myself about it, or I can't beat myself up about it, because, I mean, it was temporary anyway. If I were to have stayed, it would have been temporary. I believe so, but, so who cares? I mean, it is what it is, bro. But, I mean, to get back to it, life was going great for that time. During that time, life was amazing for me. School was getting better. My home life was awesome, But like they say, all good things must come to an end. Because one day, my dad sat me and my younger brother down, and he informed us that we were going to live with our mother. Somehow my mom won the custody battle, and my dad had to send us away to go live with her. And once my dad informed us about that, or once he told us about what was going to occur, I was very heartbroken. I was depressed. You know, obviously, I did not want to leave my perfect life behind. I did not want to start over. I did not want to do everything all over again. I was scared. I was so attached to my perfect life that, you know, I was depressed. So my dad tried to make it up to us by taking us to Disneyland, but even that felt bittersweet. That happiness, the happiness of being at Disneyland did not last long because I knew eventually that I was going to have to leave. So after that trip ended, I returned to school for the last time, and I informed my classroom that I was going to leave. I informed them that I was leaving for good, and, well, my dad told me that I was going to return the next summer because that was the deal that my mom and my dad supposedly had. I'm going to return for the summer, but I never fucking did. So I told my classroom that I'm leaving, but I'm coming back for the summer. Don't worry, guys, I'm coming back. But I never returned, man. But I will never forget it. My teacher got the entire classroom to sing "He's a Jolly Good Fellow," that old school song, and they tried to send me away on a high note, and, Isabella was sad, and she gave me a big tight hug, and she told me to come back, and again, I told her that I'm going to come back to visit, and everyone said that they were going to miss me, which made me feel good because no one ever said that ever again. Like, that was the first and only time that someone told me that they were going to miss me. Like, it felt like I really had a place in that school. But, yeah, man, eventually I left, and I parted ways with California for good. Since 2009, I have never returned to California. It is 2020 fucking 5. You do the math. Like, that's how long it's been ages since I've been in that environment, man. So eventually my father shipped us away, and we reunited with our mother, which I was happy about. It wasn't the fact that I had to go and live with my mom. It was the fact that I had to start over and leave my established world, like I've said many times before. And also, I discovered that her life or her environment was completely different from my father's environment. The neighborhood that my mother lived in was urban, it was ghetto, it was a dangerous environment, whereas my father's neighborhood or the house we lived in California with my dad, it was a peaceful, quiet suburban neighborhood. So that contrast fucked me up. It was a crazy culture shock. It's like a Nepo baby in Hollywood being forced to move to some village in Africa. That's what it felt like. Not trying to be weird, but that's what it felt like. It felt as if I was entering a war zone or preparing to be in some just hyper violent danger zone. I can't articulate it, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, moving to the urban slums was a culture shock that I was not prepared for. It was always having to look over your shoulder. You had to conform to a way of being. You had to conform to that lifestyle, or else you were deemed outcast, or you were treated as a loser or a lame. And you guys know, if you're African American, you know what that's like. It's not to exclude anyone, but I mean, that's what happens when you are placed in those environments where you don't fit in. People expect you to be a certain way, and that's what I had to suffer, and I had to go through that for my entire fucking childhood, ever since 2009, or ever since 2010. Ever since 2010, after I left California, I was put in this constant battle, and I had to fight to maintain my identity, and I had to fight to protect who I was, and I had to deal with bullying. I had to deal with gang culture being around me, and I had to deal with a violent, just depressing, miserable existence whenever I was in that neighborhood. And my father told me as a grown man that he is sorry for sending us into that neighborhood. My dad regrets doing that. He realized that that was not the best decision to make. But he was a young man. My dad was a young man, and he thought that sending us to go be with our brothers was a great thing. And I don't fault him for that. But at the same time, the damage is done. It is what it is. Me being a fish out of water and me being placed in a predominantly black school, it stunted my social life. It stunted me. It stunted me socially. It ruined me. Because from the very first day, I was automatically picked on. I was immediately, I was deemed to be an outcast. Like, I was treated so badly ever since that day. Ever since my first day of going to a predominantly black school, I was treated like an outcast. And, I never recovered. I never let go of that 2009 experience. I always remembered that experience because that was the best it ever got for me. And that's depressing to say, but it's the truth, man. I mean, I can go into more detail about my middle school and high school experience if you guys would like that. But, I mean, as far as my elementary school years, it was pretty much just depressing after I got to PA. Like I said, man, I had to just adjust, but I never did adjust, man. I don't know. I don't want to just... I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but you get the picture, bro. You get the picture. My life was good in California. It was terrible in PA. What can you do about it? And my experience is also why I do not want to have children. Because I can't imagine being so selfish and making a life decision that could damage my child in the future. Like, it's so insane, man. It's just so insane. That one decision ruined my life. It really did ruin my fucking life, bro. So, yeah, after that, I was just faced with bullying, and it took me a while to adjust. Eventually, I had to realize that I was never going back to California. And after that, I slowly just got used to my life in PA. And my mom, like, she did the best she could. We did live in good neighborhoods with my mom, but it was, like, inconsistent. One year we're in a good neighborhood. The next year we're back into a bad neighborhood. So it was very inconsistent, So it wasn't all bad, but it wasn't as consistent as my life in California. But I still love my mom. I still cherish her. But, damn, man, I just wonder, bro. I just wonder. I don't know if this was enjoyable. Hopefully it was. Like I said, I am not the best storyteller. I'm trying to get used to doing this. So hopefully this was entertaining for you guys. If you guys like this, you could, just let me know if you do like this. And also let me know if you guys want more stories, because I can tell more stories. But yeah, man, this was something I wanted to do for a very long time, man. Very long time. I wanted to switch it up for once, just give you guys some variety and just, again, let you guys in on my life in a sense. But, man, that happens, man. That happens when divorces occur, man. And that's why it's like, I don't know, man. It's so brutal, bro. It's so brutal. I wonder how many of you guys have went through the same thing. Like, have your parents got divorced, or I don't know, man. Just let me know, I guess, but take care.